And this resulted in a drop in revenue of $4.2 million. And you could understand that with the madness that is attached to the divestment program, the implications that you're taking in $4.2 million less to still maintain all of the units across the housing estates that we have. Mr. Speaker, we have taken a proactive approach in terms of managing what is going on with those units across the country. More than a month ago, the Honourable Member for St. Andrew and myself and top management personnel from within the ministry were doing site visits. As a matter of fact, we will continue tomorrow. But those site visits, Mr. Speaker, were basically a fact-finding mission to identify some of the issues that are facing the tenants within those housing units and to try as much as possible to find solutions, proactive solutions to fix the issues that we're seeing on the ground. Mr. Speaker, what is noteworthy is that we had ministers who visited or who were in this particular chamber, this August chamber, functioning not only in the capacity of whatever ministry they had, but these ministers were functioning as chief town planners. Because we have found in some of the estates, and I'm not trying to cast any aspiration of the tenants that we serve, but we would have found in some of the estates that some of those ministers gave permission for persons to construct additional buildings onto the existing units. And like I said, we would have visited at least 5 locations to date. And these ministers who function like little Hitlers and demagogues created some issues for us. Mr. Speaker, we would have visited Gore Hill and we would have visited Deacon's Farm. And I'm suggesting that what is happening, it is impacting on our ability to treat to some of the issues that are kind of acute at these locations. We understand, and we have found, in fact, that at a lot of these housing units, there's a degree of overcrowding. And the reality is that the same way that I mentioned just now about the rural-urban migration, one of the solutions that we're looking at is, in a sense, thinning out some of these housing estates by providing an opportunity for persons to purchase land outside of the urban corridors. And this resolution today is a step in that direction. But, Mr. Speaker, you can imagine the pressures that are happening at those particular locations and the fact that we have the personnel that are ready and ready to go as it relates to fixing those particular problems. An example of this, the electrical upgrade is going to cost $7,401 per unit at these locations. And this is something that we have to make right as part of the divestment process. And we're doing what is necessary. I know maybe in a week's time or so that electrical upgrade will happen. We have identified those electricians that will be a part of the process, and that will happen very, very soon. Mr. Speaker, we have paid engineers to the tune of $1.3 million to carry out the assessment across the particular housing estates as it relates again to this divestment program. It is something that we have to do. Mr. Speaker, $495,000 to date was paid to surveys to try to rectify the issues as it relates to these housing units. And one must bear in mind, Mr. Speaker, that in some cases, some of these units are more than 50 years old. And according to the engineers, any building that is in excess of 50 years is what they would call maybe problematic. It is outside the scope of actually being able to retrofit that building to bring it to modern day standards. And we have seen, Mr. Speaker, at some locations you have some of the construction work where some of the houses, there are no ring beams, and this is creating an issue because, again, of the age of some of these units. So it is a tall order for the National Housing Corporation and for the ministry to deal with this particular issue as it relates to how we treat to this situation going forward. Mr. Speaker, 97% of those persons who we have sent letters to indicating that they qualified for the divestment program would have accepted those letters and agreed that they would be part of the process. So you understand the mammoth task that it is that we are straddled with as it relates to what can be only considered as a little madness that the previous government engaged in. Now understand that this particular divestment program was supposed to run for 100 days. It was supposed to run for 100 days, Mr. Speaker. But I was going to say in their wisdom, but some other word, they decided now to run this program for all of those who qualified under the 20-year program. You live there for 20 years, the unit is yours. So it's no longer the 100 days. And we are straddled with that. The truth is that, like I said, we have taken a proactive approach to the maintenance. Maybe it is not as fast as persons would have expected, but we are actually doing what is necessary to make wrong things right as it relates to persons all across these estates. And like I said, we are turning up things that we have not planned for. When you hit the ground, the things that you're seeing at the different locales, we have not planned for it, but that is the reality. And we have to deal with it because all of this fall under the remit of the ministry's role in terms of providing low-cost housing for persons who are interested in purchasing what we normally call piece of the rock. And the truth is that we have had expressions of interest from a couple of persons and organizations who have indicated that yes, they want to be part of the process of providing low-cost housing, in particular for persons across this country. And when we speak of low-cost housing, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we understand that the initial $5,000 and $10,000 that is required to trigger a mortgage is not money that is available to those persons who work at the gas stations, those persons who work in the supermarkets. And I have been inundated by persons within the constituency of St. John as well, asking for low-cost housing. And speaking of the constituency of St. John, it would be remiss of me, Mr. Speaker, not to mention that a situation in Bathland and Welch that was a marathon race where persons were trying under the Tenantries Freehold Purchase Act to gain land has now moved from a marathon to a 100-meter sprint because they're seeing the finish line in St. John as it relates to owning that property at Bath and Welch. And all of this, Mr. Speaker, is related to a government under Prime Minister Mayor Motley that is turning the ship of Barbados.
The member for St. Michael East.
Sorry? The Honourable Member for St. Michael. Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. Northeast. But we are turning the ship. We are turning the ship. And in the constituency of St. John, I would like to speak and say right there that the ship is turning around slowly as well. And in the same vein, the Ministry of Housing, Lands and Rural Development is turning around. Because for 10 years, they had two ministers there, and it is mind-boggling to realize that nothing has been done, particularly in the housing estate, to rectify some of the issues that we're seeing today in 2019. And I believe I believe that in short order, some of the critical issues that are currently in vogue will be rectified in short notice. Resources will come, and at some point in time, Mr. Speaker, we will solve the issue that is vexing across the housing estates across this island. It will take time, but we have the desire and the will to ensure that all of our tenants across the housing estates are at some point in time resting in a certain degree of comfort. It may not happen in a month, but for sure it will happen in quick time because we are actively on the job. Mr. Speaker, I thank you. I'm obliged. Sorry, Mr. Deputy Speaker, I move that this resolution be now passed.
Thank you. Yes. The honourable member for St. Lucie.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to lend solid support to this resolution. Let me take the opportunity, as I haven't before, to welcome back to this chamber the leader, the honourable member for St. Michael Southeast, leader of government business. It is good to look across the room and see such a nice, pleasant, smiling face. Not you, boss. But, Mr. Speaker, I am in solid support of this resolution, this morning, not only because the land lies within my constituency, but it is necessary and absolutely necessary that this government has undertaken to really look seriously, as we have always done, after years of neglect at the housing situation in this country. Regrettably, we are not in a position to build units at this time. But that which we can do now in terms of giving opportunity to persons who want to own a piece of the rock, as we would call it, we are certainly forging ahead with that. And as stated by the honourable member for St. John, there will be some 79 lots or so available at Colleton. And the infrastructural costs would be somewhere in the region of $2.2 million. And this project is expected to last somewhere around, in terms of 2 years or so, with construction costs set perhaps at about $11 million. And we would want to engage, and I encourage as a matter of fact, public-private partnerships in this regard. Now, after years of nothing virtually happening, and happening particularly in the north of this country, we are seeing progress being made. And we know that there are other plans, there are other parcels of land within St. Lucie. I know as a fact that this government is looking to assist persons with, in terms of ownership, lands at Coconut Hall and lands at Cloughs. And they understand there's also some land which I would encourage the Ministry of Housing, I would encourage the government to approach the church lands at Lowlands and so on, that we can do plenty development, or people can get the opportunity to own a piece of the rock. We are indeed serious, Mr. Speaker, sir, about development within this country. The constituency of St. Lucie, and I speak on this, has had no significant development for a number of years, except between the period 1981 to 86, and again between the period 1994 to 2008 under the Barbados Labour Party administration, where we had the Mount Poyer project that was started. Now, we would have had politics of smoke screens, of smoke and mirrors being practiced for a period of time. But we now are serious about doing what we have to do in relation to persons being able to own a piece of the rock. And I said this, Mr. Speaker, sir, about 2 weeks or so ago, Mr. Deputy Speaker, this is before we went on, we had a break. I took a stroll down Broad Street, and on returning here, I was met by a young lady out of my constituency who seemed to be distressed and highly distressed over the fact that she is trying to be able to get herself a home, and having approached a lending institution as a self-employed person, as an entrepreneur, she was asked to produce the kind of documents and so on that she was not necessarily in a position to. And one of these was an audited statement, and she had to, an audited financial statement, and she told me that she required, to get that done, she had to look for $7,000 to get this done just for the statement, so that she can take to the institution to borrow some money to be able to get her own home. A nail technician having to find that sort of money as a small businesswoman in the first place. And she was really stressed out, right? Mr. Speaker, we have to find a way and do things as a government that would enable or that would assist small persons, the smaller man, the persons that work whose salary scales are down under $3,000, $4,000 a month, policemen, guards, merchandisers in supermarkets, the supermarket people, cashiers, gas station attendants, some nurses. We have to find a way, and indeed I know it is the will of this government to assist in whatever regard that we can, whatever way that we can, to assist these persons to own a piece of the rock. So this land at Colleton with 79 lots, and I would hope that persons in those scales not benefit totally, because I think we have to have some sort of mixed development where there are persons from in all the salary scales, whether you're low income, middle income, and higher income, but all of these people are able to purchase and get a piece of the rock to develop themselves as persons. I don't want to see a situation where the rich come and get all, and the ordinary person at the bottom don't get any. That is not the type of government that we run, that the Barbados Labour Party has been accustomed to over the years, because we have looked out on all occasions for the smaller person. We have looked out for everybody, as a matter of fact, that they can benefit when we have these sort of developments and so on. And Mr. Speaker, the opportunity of this project that we discussed this morning is for persons such as the masons, the carpenters, and so on. Once this project takes off, we'll get some jobs too, because jobs are the other things that we are looking at. My friend from St. Peter will be able to get, the honorable member for St. Peter will be able to let some masons come across and get some of the work in St. James South, in St. James North, and wherever they come from. We want to offer the opportunities, not just for people to own the land, but they will get some jobs too, to help themselves and help their families. This is what this government is about. Mr. Speaker, I realize, and I have encountered over time, especially since becoming the Member of Parliament for the constituency of St. Lucie, there are some problems that have been raised, and we as a government have to look at these situations, these issues, and address them. And we think we need, in this regard, problems have been raised with landlords and the government. You know what is happening, because what is happening in the public sector, people focus on it because it is the government. The government does not repair this, the government does not repair that, the government is not doing this, the government is not doing that, looking after the wells, looking after the electrical wiring, looking after so many different things, the roof leaking and so on. Those problems also exist with private landlords. And Mr. Speaker, we have to take a zero tolerance for this kind of behavior, whether it's the government or whether it is private landlords. And we have to, as a matter of policy, look at the legislation which governs landlords and tenantry, the landlord and tenants legislation too. Because we have some landlords out there, Mr. Speaker, and I have to say this, that do not treat the tenants well. You pay your rent, Mr. Speaker, every month, and the roof's still leaking. You pay your rent every month, Mr. Speaker, and the crease is still in the doors, the wind coming through, as though the door opened. You pay your rent, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the bathroom's still leaking. And the same way it is the responsibility of a government to look after its housing units and so on, it must be, and we must find a way to enforce it, that landlords look after their properties as well. People pay money and expect to live comfortably. We have to do it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Deputy Speaker. We have to do it. Because there is no way that anybody, and when I say that, the tenants have a role to play as well. You have to take care of the properties. A lot of people mash up properties. The government pay for does the government want it in mind? No, it is the taxpayers of Barbados' own, and the money have to come from the pockets of the taxpayers. The government don't have a money tree any place. Money has to be found somewhere, and the Ministry of Finance will tell you good about this when we have to fix these places. Similarly, for the private landlords, and I argue a case for them too, tenants who went from private landlords have to learn to take care of their properties as well. Don't say that it isn't mine, and you break off the door, your boyfriend break off the door, your children break a glass window, and you ain't care about it. Glass window is a term from the country, from the north. We familiar with that. You know, and you have these malicious acts sometimes that take place, Mr. Speaker, because tenants feel it is not my property. And I'm appealing to them this morning, today, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, take care of the properties, because treat it as though it is your own. Because when money has to be spent, it means that somebody is being shortchanged somewhere in terms of the government being able to find the resources now to deal with development that somebody else in Barbados may benefit as a result. I am happy, Mr. Speaker, sir, with this resolution. And I see the Honourable Member for St. Andrew, Minister of Housing. And he's familiar with cases within my constituency where there are various lots that will come under the Freehold Tenancies Purchase Act that persons have not yet been able to own them. There are others where people have been living on properties and lands where no taxes were paid for, which I want the government to look at as well, where those people I know there's some 25 plus houses at Bishop's Tenantry in St. Lucie. The landowner has died and no land tax has been paid for that property for a while. We have to look into cases like that, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Deputy Speaker, where the government now can go in and be able to sell those lots at reasonable rate for those persons who already occupy them. There's some at Crab Hill. There's some in Harrison's Tenantry. A number of places, Mr. Speaker, sir, where lands are occupied, and rightly so, where the owners have gone to the great beyond. And these areas need to be regularized in terms of land ownership. Persons feel aggrieved when, after being on land, a number of houses for 10, 15, 20 years, and then some want pop up out of the blue and ask them to move off these properties that they have occupied and were paying rent. The only reason they're not paying rent anymore is because they didn't know who to pay the rent to. And that tells me, Mr. Speaker, to some extent, it means then that there are persons out there who would just see the opportunity, who may be a distant relative of that person that have passed on, and see opportunity to own something now and come forward and say, well, I'm the owner. I need the land, so you have to move. And these people have been on these properties for 10, 15, 20 plus years and so on. And these things are wrong. And the government has to find a way. I'm asking the government through and the Honourable, the Minister, Honourable Member for St. Andrew and his colleague, the Honourable Member for St. John, to let us look as a government at these situations and try to regularize them so that the people generally in Barbados benefit from this sort of situation, Mr. Speaker, sir. I support this resolution wholeheartedly. And I look forward to this project, the completion of it, so that persons from the constituency of St. Lucie and other constituencies, because I would not be selfish, because people across Barbados need housing. So I don't want 80%. I don't want 100% for St. Lucie. I want 80%, not 20. 80. I get the right percentages. 80, which is higher than 20%. No, for me, 80 is more than 20.
So it's not a St. Lucie thing?
No. I don't want it to be a St. Lucie thing, but I want the people of St. Lucie to benefit significantly.
That 20, I thought you meant that 20 is greater than 80.
No, that is not a St. Lucie thing.
Okay.
The people of St. Lucie are much more intelligent than that, as you have seen in the choice of MP in 2018.
Exactly. Well said. Well said.
So, Mr. Speaker, I support this resolution wholeheartedly. I want to thank the Honourable Member for St. Andrew, who have rubbed shoulders with me with people in St. Lucie for a long period of time, and he has delivered on this promise that he has made generally, and I look forward to working with this minister and my colleague from the constituency of St. John in other areas in St. Lucie which we need to regularize, because that is where I represent. I know that they will do a good work across Barbados, but I'm playing for St. Lucie this morning. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for Christchurch Central.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I want to rise on this occasion to give my unreserved support to the Minister in the Ministry of Housing and Lands, Member of Parliament for St. John, of course, for the vesting of, on the resolution that speaks to the vesting of 9 acres of land at Codington in St. Lucie. I want to say, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Deputy Speaker, from the onset, that I agree wholeheartedly with the Member of Parliament for St. Lucie when he said that we have to treat St. Lucie as a special parish in the same way that we have to treat Christchurch West Central. And recognizing, of course, that it is the only female parish in Barbados, I can understand why he is fighting for a fertile place in this country. And certainly, we have to thank the people of St. Lucie, because they not only extend their democratic state last election by giving us in this August chamber a man who understands fully that 20% is less than 80%, but they must have a tangible stake in what goes on in their life in terms of the development of this country. And for that, Mr. Speaker, I am happy to see this resolution before this August chamber. Mr. Deputy Speaker, when we speak about development, when we speak about bringing Barbadians as part of our journey in this country in terms of what we want as a government, so they can have an economic and tangible stake in what goes on in their lives, we have to look at situations where the densely populated areas in Barbados, especially those in the housing areas, where we can look at other avenues to extend housing opportunities for those persons. And here lies an opportunity where persons from across Barbados can have accommodation in St. Lucie. And I want to thank the Minister of Housing, of course, for taking this opportunity and to ensure that Barbadians have a tangible space, which was so desperately lacking in the last limp and lame 10 years. I want to say to the people also of Christchurch West Central that development may be painful at sometimes, but like a bitter pill, it tastes bad at first, but in the end it is good for the body. And those residents in Kendall Hill and the area where we are doing the construction of a road and a sidewalk, I want you to bear with us, because at the end of the day, it is for your own safety and development. And I want to ask in this August chamber for the Minister of Transport, of course, Maintenance and Works, to not only ensure that the residents of Kendall Hill are happy with the development, but we want you to extend it across Silver Hill and Gull Hill as well. And the good people of that constituency asked me to be their mouthpiece today. But development must incorporate people at every stage of the way. And what we are saying today is that the artisans, as the Member of Parliament for St. Lucie spoke to earlier, must feel that they are part of this development. When we are having development in areas, in communities, the community must be engaged. And we said in our manifesto, and we trumpeted across the length and breadth of Barbados, the fact that communities must be part of this building out process. And the way how we involve the communities at all levels must be part of the wider and national conversation, where our people must feel a sense of entitlement. So the artisans, of course, that live in St. Lucie, the small contractors, and what we said as a government is that once the price is less than $250,000, we must involve and engage persons from amongst the communities, those youngsters on the blocks, where they can come and work as If they're not artisans, they can work as laborers, you name it. And we are saying that a house must be a home in Barbados. Gone are the days where development only look at putting structures in place where there is a house, a little entrance, and a backyard no bigger than what can accommodate a chihuahua. Those days are gone. We have to have a conversation where we look at housing persons in Barbados where they have a lawn at the front, a facility at the back that they can have a recreation, that they can have a barbecue, that they can have a kitchen garden, that they can grow their own food to feed themselves. Because we must involve Barbadians in every aspect of their development. And Barbadians must feel comfortable in their homes. And we also said that communities, when we are having housing projects, that we must have a wider conversation as it relates to sewage disposal. When we will have community sewage units, where that there will be proper sewage. And then we can have a further conversation about the recycling. Where we can have proper, whether it's primary, secondary, or tertiary sewage facilities. Because once the filtration mechanism is there, it may not be used for potable purposes, but certainly for landscape, for agriculture, for other domestic purposes, flushing of toilets. This is the type of development and conversation we need to have if we are going to continue on an economic path of sustainability. No longer can we look at just putting the waste in the soil. We have to look and see how we can utilize our waste product in circular Barbados, as you heard the Minister of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy speak on a regular basis. How we can utilize every single thing that we have as waste to regenerate economic activity in this country. So from the sewage, we can have methane as a viable option in terms of our gas production, our energy production. And these are the sort of conversations we need to have if we are talking about sustainable development and development of our people. In the same way that we have to have a further conversation about our disabled community. Because if we are having housing units in Barbados and we are serious about developing people, I'm saying that all housing units, all housing projects must have facilities for the disabled community. And that is the sort of conversation that we are, as a government, that we are having. Because our disabled people, our people too, are very important to this country. And they must have not only a democratic state, but a tangible state in what goes on in Barbados. The elderly, those in the twilight of their years, there must be a community park, a facility to accommodate our elderly. And I will speak unequivocally about the elderly. I love the elderly. Everybody in Barbados knows that.
We know that.
And my mother sitting down, so she knows that too.
We know that. And it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Those in the twilight of their years. Because the moral test and the litmus test for any government is how they treat those in the twilight of their years. And the Prime Minister, in her wisdom, obviously, give me responsibility for those in the dawn. I will take care of those in the dawn in the same way and with the same gusto as I take care of those in the twilight of their years. Because we must have an all-embracing society and an all-embracing government. I am saying that not only how we treat to the disabled community, but how we treat to the elderly. And any serious housing development must have a component that looks at accommodating the elderly and activities that will be suitable for them. And when you watch Q in the community, you see all those, we call the elderly folk, those that are past your age, that Mr. Deputy Speaker, not the sexagenarians, the septuagenarians. You would understand, but those elderly folk, they enjoy themselves. They are the Trojans and mentors of this country. And they must have a special stake in Barbados. And then what happened? And I'm saying that any housing development that is serious about people must incorporate the elderly. They must have play a part for the children of this country. And I'm telling you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, as long as I sit as a representative of the people of Christchurch West Central, as long as I am able to vocalize on their behalf, I am saying, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that there must be a place for the disabled community. The housing unit must have facilities that accommodate the disabled. They must have ramps, wheelchair facilities. They must have areas that our disabled community can feel a part of Barbados. It is how we treat the people that will determine our success as a government in the next 20, 30 years on. And I'm saying that we must treat the people in a special way. And we must be able to accommodate our people, and any development we are having, whether vertical or horizontal, must take these things into account. And Mr. Speaker, we must be able to utilize our spaces. Gone are the days when you talk about agriculture, that the discussion only lends itself to horizontal development and horizontal agriculture. We are talking about hydroponics and aquaponics. This is the day and the age of technology. We are in a new sphere, Mr. Speaker. And this sphere speaks to young people being involved in quantum physics. They're involved in hydroponics, aquaponics, vertical farming. These are the sort of conversations we are having with our young people. So when we are talking about these things, Mr. Speaker, in the age of technology, in the age where we have a ministry of smart technology, because we believe that we have smart Barbadians, I certainly believe that we have smart young people. And based on the calculations, the good calculations of the Member of Parliament for St. Lucie, we have smart MPs and Member of Parliament in this August chamber. Because he understands that 80% is greater than 20%, even if you wait 10 different times. And he understands it. And that you don't have to wait to recognize that it is so. But what I'm saying to you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, is that Barbados must look at development, look to maximize space, see how our new technology, how the aquaponics, the hydroponics, how it work in communities, how we can utilize the space that is available to us so that agriculture becomes a part of the conversation. That community farming becomes part of any development, where the community helps feed itself, where communities help to feed themselves. And similar to what I'm doing in the block project, because with that project, those youngsters and on those blocks and those areas that we are redefining and that we are building out in both a literal and figurative sense, those areas will have a community farm and an area where persons can plant their vegetables and help feed the communities. We must allow communities to work hand in glove. Because in the same way, and I said it before, that it takes many hands to make light work. No work make light hands. And that is the problem that we are faced with. We have to be able to engage our people at every step of the journey. Incorporate them in every conversation we have and bring them along the way, because that is the only way we are going to have sustainable development. Because sustainable development speaks primarily about involving people in the development plan. How can you have a development plan, housing or otherwise, and don't involve people in every step of the way? And that is the sort of conversation we are having. We are not dropping these things out of the sky like something from a Chicken Little episode. This is not kindergarten stuff. This is serious business, and we made a determination since 25th of May last year that our business is the business of the people of this country. That is the determination that we made. And we are saying that any housing development that is serious in this country must incorporate people. And it must have at its core the 3 P's of sustainable development. You must involve people in every single aspect of this development. People as it relates to feeding themselves, so that hunger will be a thing of the past, so that the basic needs of the persons in this society could be realized. And right now in Barbados, as much as we may want to think different, a lot of persons go to sleep at night without having their basic needs: food, shelter, water. I know that the Minister of Water and Energy, that he has worked with alacrity, with every single sinew of his being, to ensure that the basic commodity like water can reach every single Barbadian. Those basic things. If those basic things as a government are not the low-hanging fruit, then we are wasting time in this country. And I am saying that the basic needs of Barbadian, and if you really look at the sustainable development of people, hunger, how we treat today, housing units, their shelter, clothing. And I said it earlier, that Barbadians can no longer aspire to have a house. They must have a home where the community looks after themselves, where there's a sense of safety and relaxation. Because, as I said before, a village may not raise a child, but a family certainly can. And we have to get back that family connection. That love and that unity that we had before, that saw Barbados through the worst economic situation. The only way we can do it is if we pull together. And I said before that we as a government will not walk in front of people, because if we walk in front, they may not follow. We certainly will not walk behind, because they may not lead. We will walk at the side of Barbadians, hand in hand, in order to realize the Bajan dream. Because that's what we have to talk about. That Barbadian dream. The dream of every Barbadian to have their own homes. The dream of every Barbadian to be able to support themselves and their families. And you heard the Member of Parliament for St. Lucie spoke about the need to incorporate the community of St. Lucie into the housing development by providing work. The artists, the artisans, tradesmen, contractors. It will be a building boom across this country. And that is how you generate disposable income. I don't have to understand that 20% is less than 80% to understand that. That is basic maths. And I am saying another P, as it relates to sustainable development, is prosperity. Because the people must be able to benefit in any development in this country. They must be able to have a tangible state. They must be able to see that there is something going into their pocket so they can help support themselves and their family at the end of the day. So they can walk and have a conversation along the way where they can realize, as I said before, that Barbadian dream. So there must be prosperity that is shared with our people. There must be peace. Because anything you're looking at, sustainable development, it's how we work together in communities. And when you talk about housing development, and you look at communities across Barbados and what is happening, there must be a special appeal for peace, for love, for unity, for relationships, for people to walk in a journey together for the betterment of this country. So peace must be an important part of this conversation. Then there must be partnerships. And I'm happy to say that we have had partnerships with NGOs over the years, philanthropic organizations like the Murray Holder Trust, and then we thank them unreservedly for what they have been doing for our country. Because the government cannot do it alone. We must have partnerships with other entities, with other organizations, whether it's international organizations or local organizations, to help build out Barbados in terms of developing this country and moving us once again to being the Mecca of the Caribbean, the shining light. And that is what Barbados was seen as up to the last 10 years. As a country, the words of Kofi Annan, who certainly punched above the weight. It was a Mike Tyson. Probably a Mike Tyson versus a Kirk Humphrey. Not the tropical storm Kirk, because nature just have a way of destroying everything. But I'm saying, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that we must form partnerships with people, with organizations, with communities, on every single project that we aspire to realize to the people of this country. And finally, Mr. Speaker, and I say finally, the planet must be an important cog in the development of our people. How we treat our planet. You hear about global warming, and the effects it will have on this entire planet. We've had conversations as it relates to the new economies, the green, the orange, the blue economy. We've had from the Minister of Energy and Water Resources a plan in place to bring us to a carbon neutral and certainly fossil fuel free environment by the year 2030. Now, this is not a whimsical dream. This is something that we have started the conversation with our people as it relates to the green economy and how we are going to look. And I'm saying that any development plan must seek to have conversations with those persons in the recycling energy sector, where that we are able to reduce our energy consumption, where we will have less carbon dioxide affecting the ozone, less water vapor, less ozone, less harmful chemicals that would affect our children, our families, the animals, the planet. So any developmental plan, housing or otherwise, must take into account not only sewage and tank and water storage facilities, but we must start having a conversation about recycling energy, whether it is wind, the wind turbine, whether it is the alternative energy from the sun, so we can have a wider conversation with our people about the importance of having recycling energy being a major part of our energy catchment and how we utilize energy. And then there must be a conversation about how we protect our environment, how we dispose of our garbage. So any housing development is a development that gives us the opportunity to have these wider conversations with our people, so we can sensitize Barbadians about garbage disposal and how to separate garbage and what can be used for recycling purposes. And I heard the Minister for the Blue Economy and Maritime spoke lucidly about the need to have a circular Barbados and how we can try to utilize everything that we have available to us, for the fish offal and the silage, back down to our paper disposal. So we must have that conversation, because as I speak, the ocean is rising. Global warming is having an effect on our animals. So the conversation about housing development must take into account how we dispose our garbage, because how we dispose our garbage affects every single Barbadian. How we burn our fuels, our fossil fuels, those are the type of conversations we must have as part of a sustainable development plan. And we must not be muted in our efforts. We must not be silent, although this August Chamber was exposed to a high level of silence.
True.
Some call it silence, others call it laughter. There was a mixture sometimes of both.
We want the members to stick to the resolution.
But the importance of having a housing unit, a housing development that speaks to these sustainable development entities, Mr. Speaker, it redounds to the benefit of every Barbadian. And if you're having a housing development and you do not incorporate garbage disposal, sewage disposal, if you don't incorporate alternative energy, then we are spinning top in mud. That is the reality. We must be able to have, we must not only be able to put up vertical structures because they look good. We must be able to involve the community and the sustainable development in every single thing we do, because that is how we build our people. That is how we are able to protect our planet. And in closing, Mr. Speaker, sir, and I want to give kudos and pay homage today, of course, to my good friend, the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South, because the ban on plastic is important, Mr. Speaker, in this conversation we are having about sustainable development. They say that Pimp C, and we have any youngsters nowadays, and I will close on this. We have youngsters nowadays in this country who are using lean. Lean is a mixture, Mr. Deputy Speaker, of codeine lactose, Sprite, and something that's very sweet. And in this conversation we are having with those youngsters, trying to get them to go the right path as it relates to drug usage. We just really recognize, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that they are using double styrofoam containers as a way of allowing the styrene to seep into the actual product they're having to synergize this product when they're using it. I am saying to the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South, you are able to kill two birds, my brother, with one stone. Because in the same way you are trying to rid this planet of plastic, I am saying to you, the styrofoam, the petrol-based styrofoam, is being used for another purpose. So therefore, with the ban of the styrofoam-based containers, not only help to protect our planet, but it avoid us having to deal with our young people who are using them so that they can get an additional high with the lean. So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I want to thank you for engaging me, and I want to thank the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South, because
You're welcome.
you have saved our young people, trust me. Thank you.
Member for Christ, St. Michael South. St. Michael South.
Thank you very much, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I obviously wish to support the Honourable Member for St. John, and of course my good friend, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central.
You did it.
And Mr. Speaker, sir, I wish to speak on this. I wish to speak on this housing resolution, sir, from a number of angles. And to say, of course, that as we plan out in Barbados, sir, I think we have to be very clear and determined and purposeful as we go forward, sir, so that we do not repeat the sins of the past. And the sins of the distant past, because I believe a lot of these large housing schemes, sir, were meant to tackle a housing problem, sir, without careful consideration to the other problems that they may cause, and sins of the recent past, because I believe in the last 10 years, those issues were compounded by a lack of maintenance, a lack of regard for the people who live in these areas, sir. And in many cases, just to build housing that nobody could afford, because we still had a number of houses that were vacant as we came into office. So I feel that we have to be clear, sir, first and foremost, as we build forward on any housing policy. I listened to the Honourable Member for St. John, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I see, in his own words, I think he said he was going to paint. He's going to paint for us this morning a picture. And I think he did a very good job, so in so doing, sir. And I want to speak, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, on housing, because housing is very important to me, not only as a Member of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, sir, but that as somebody who grew up in a government housing unit, sir, for most of my life, and my family, my sister is still there, my brothers, Mr. Speaker, sir, these things are personal to me. And I do not speak on these things as political issues, sir. I speak on these things as real-life issues. These are real things. And, you know, in the Pine, and the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East, sir, who is not well, but who made sure she visited the Pine to tackle the issues in the Pine, to put the interests of her constituents before herself, Mr. Speaker, sir. I wish to praise her in this honourable place this morning, sir.
Very well.
But the issues there, sir, are, you know, in the Pine they used to say P, P for Pine, P for Perry, P for prison. And the problems in the Pine are a new P. They're pervasive, perennial, sir, and persistent. I have known those problems in the Pine my whole life. When I was a boy, Mr. Speaker, sir, I saw the Barbados Labour Party in office the Democratic Liberal Party in office, the Barbadian Liberal Party in office again, sir. And efforts made at some, and I must say, I don't want to be political, but efforts made, I believe, by both parties at times to deal with it. I saw the BLP, the DLP, and the BLP in power in the presence of one man who was BLP, DLP, BLP. A community-minded man, Mr. Speaker, sir, and the problems in the Pine still persisted. And in the last 10 years, sir, the problems in the Pine and other, I believe, I'm only speaking to the Pine now, but the same in Gore Hill and Silver Hill and Deacon's Farm and Ferniehurst and all those areas, sir, because it is quite easy for people to become invisible. I saw in today's paper the Honorable Prime Minister speaking to the issue, and then there are comments of somebody saying that this is going to blow over, that the government is going to let this blow over, because that is what governments do. They talk because something is hot and they let it blow over. But that these issues in housing, sir, are of such significance that I do not believe that any right-thinking government can let them blow over. And that is why I feel, Mrs. Deputy Speaker, sir, that the last 10 years, sir, when nothing was done in many of these areas, in fact, what was done there was worse than doing nothing, which is to come and promise people housing, knowing full well that the state of the houses was not in any real way to give to people. You make a promise to poor people that you are going to give them a house, sir, that in essence they would become in many ways more of a liability than an asset unless you're able to fix them up. I know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, from my experience, because when I lived in the Pine, my house was 5H. And for those who live in a housing unit, H is the last house on the block. And if you live on the last house on the block, if your sink backs up, it means that A back up, B, C, D, E, G, before H backs up. And if you have to go and clear that toilet, which is now the case, you can't clear it on your own, because you can't clear A, B, C, D, E, and G. If your electricity goes off, you can't address it in your house. You have to walk to the end of the block where they would have 8 of the meters. You got to walk outside in the middle of the night or in the rain, and then you have to go and flick the switch on the block, sir, and hope it come on, because you're hoping that electricity really trip and that it ain't turn off. But that's the truth. Yeah. And then, sir, to come and tell people you're going to give them these houses when you know full well that the state of the houses really and truly wasn't in a position to pass over to people was wrong. And then to hold on to the deed because you know you can't fix them and still dangling it like a carrot trying to trick poor people. Mr. Speaker said that is what we had in the last 10 years. And I saw it time and time again. And now people have all kinds of things to say. The problems in the Pine are perennial. When I was a boy, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, and I wasn't even going to speak to this, but I saw the article in the paper today. When I was a boy, there was a lady who was skipping on a well in the Pine. Skipping on a well. The well collapsed under her weight while she was skipping. And I just said, I see for myself, nobody didn't tell me. And the men then formed a human chain link, sir, and they went in the well and they pulled her out. And that lady, it was a well, again, if you know these areas, these wells are at the end of the block. So you're dealing with everything that came from A, B, C, D, E, and G, and H before it gets to that well. For years. So this was a well that was backed up for years. And when they pulled her out the well, the state the lady was in, throwing up feces all over her face, sir. The thought of it still irks me. And the reason is, Mrs. Deputy Speaker, I'm not advocating that anybody should skip on a well. But if you look at a lot of these wells, what would happen in the past? And I saw it, the block that I grew up on was called the well, because it was a well. I spent my whole childhood laying on a well. In fact, when they go in the Pine, they still go on the well. What they would do oftentimes is that they would come and they would plaster the middle of the well, the seams, the cracks, so you cannot see the real state of the wells. It is a dangerous thing. And then but you camouflage these cracks and you camouflage the dangers that you're dealing with. And then people go and expose themselves unknowingly to all kinds of dangers. And so that was in the 80s. And now fast forward many years, 14 and 19, was that 33 years? 33 years later, because it was about 86. We now find ourselves grappling with these issues, sir, and that this government, sir, is committed to fixing, separating us, sir, from other governments. And I could not rest well, Mr. Speaker, sir, to be part of a government, sir, that did not treat seriously to the issue. The problem is that we inherited such a bad hand.
Yeah.
We inherited a situation, sir, where you could pick any ministry in this country. Any ministry. You could pick almost any institution, any infrastructure, and recognize that the state of the institution or the infrastructure is so terrible as to be in jeopardy itself. And then we now find that whole situation across the country compounded by the fact that the government inherited a situation where there was no money. None. So you now have to fix all of these things in our mind in the shortest possible time frame with very limited resources. And that is why when I come, and I do not ask people lightly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I know the people in the Pine are angry. I was there. I know the people across other areas are angry. I have people sending me pictures now in my constituency of wells. I know people are angry. We are asking people, sir, to give us a little time, whole stream. But in situations where these wells are in need of some repair, sir, just point it out to us and let us see how we can do it. But I also feel that we have a private sector in Barbados that feels that their only role in Barbados is to make money. A private sector, sir, that refuses to engage in a lot of these social activities, that they feel their only role is to make money. And that you could pick any constituency, for the most part, there are businesses in those constituencies with resources too, that they could help us deal with some of these issues too. Because the government and the private sector must work in hand, and that relationship must not necessarily be all the time that the government is helping the private sector. I call on the private sector to help the government too, and to help us address some of these challenges that we are now dealing with, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. And that none of us in this room, sir, feel comfortable about what happened in the Pine. I have a picture that was sent to me in my own constituency now of a well, apparently, because you can't see the well. I'm going there this evening. But there's an area where grass is covering something, and a lady pointed it out and said, that is a well right there. What are you going to do about it? Well, I can't see the well. I wouldn't know it's a well. But I feel we also got to call on our citizens too. The people in my constituency, I call on them, and I hope you call on yours. Because if you know there are certain areas where things have to be done, don't wait for something to happen. Don't wait for it to happen. Talk to somebody. So now we're going to go visit this area, but I'm sure there are other areas where a little grass has overgrown a space, sir, and you don't know, and a child could be as equally exposed as the case in the Pine. So all of us now have to play our part, sir, in trying to address these issues in Barbados. It's not going to be easy, but nobody came to office hoping to achieve easy, at least I hope not. We came to office hoping to make real change, Mr. Speaker, sir, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. That's why we are here. And I give my commitment to my people in St. Michael South. I gave it from the start that I will do everything in my power to make sure that their lives are better when I leave. But I also feel, sir, that I would be a liar to myself if I did not say that the people in the Pine matter to me in a meaningful, personal way, sir, because I grew up there. I spend all of my time there. I know the family. I know, sir, that at the back of that area, sir, there's a stretch of wells. I know if you walk through Bottom Close where I grew up, at the end of every block, sir, there are a whole set of wells. And so it affects me personally, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. And I feel that I can speak for the Honourable Member for St. Michael South East when I say, sir, that we will put our combined efforts as a government, sir, to make sure that it does not stay the way that it currently is. It cannot. And that is why we came to office, not to trick people. And if the last government achieved anything in the 10 years that they had the office, sir, is that they involved themselves in all kind of chicanery, all kind of trickery. That's what they did. All kind of carrots dangling in front of poor people. If they achieved the only good thing, or the only thing they did good, because they did, I can think of very few good things, but the thing they did best was to trick people. And I want to have all kinds of things to say about a government that is doing their best, sir, to put wrong things right for the people of this country. It manifests itself, sir, in renewable energy, because they talk about it and did nothing. It manifests itself, sir, in relation to our relationships with the international financial services sector, where they put us in a position, sir, where we couldn't get ourselves out easily, sir, and we now have to negotiate. They do it in the market, sir. And they do it clearly in housing. Every aspect of it, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, you can see that the last government, sir, was doing everything in their power to trick poor people. And I didn't plan to speak to that, sir, but I feel like I had to get it off of my chest. But I want to talk about housing policy in a more generic way, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. And why I think housing policy is going to be important. Sir, any housing policy should not harm the health of a community. You know, I often ask myself, to be truthful with you, even though I support the honorable member for St. John, and I heard his request, to go and get a housing policy now in St. Michael South, where you get 20 houses. And I see every week in my constituency on Wednesdays, I see more than 20 people that want houses. And I often wonder if I were to try to create a housing solution and build 20 houses, 15 houses in my constituency, sir, I often wonder of the pressure that would place on the system and how many people would I truly help. And the fact is, as politicians, sometimes, sir, you go and you do something and with the best intention to help one person, you end up offending 25. You know, you put down a house, you tell yourself you did your best, you don't even get involved in who selects the house. And then a whole set of people are upset with you. But I feel like we have to think clearly about our housing policy, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. We got to figure it out. I know when you meet your constituents, they're asking about housing too. Yes. In fact, every single member in here will tell you that the people are asking time and time again about housing. I'm sure the honorable member for St. Peter has to deal with it. The honorable member for St. Philip West, the honorable member for St. Peter, everybody on this side, on the other side, all one side really. But we all have to deal with it. People want to know, can you help me with a house? And Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, the housing essentially, public housing is meant to help poor people, but essentially, housing is a private sector transaction. Essentially, it's a market transaction. And we have financial institutions, sir, that make it so difficult for people to get a house, even when you have the means.
I remember, just at this point in time, let's sit for 1 minute. I would like to recognize the Prime Minister of St. Martin, the Honorable Leona Marlene Romeo.
I met her.
Thank you. You may continue.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. Welcome to you, Prime Minister.
Okay.
I would say, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, that all of us have a role to play in this housing solution that we are attempting to offer. I was making the point that the private sector people, the banks, and the financial institutions, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, a lot of the financial institutions make it very difficult for poor people to get a loan. And for those of us who may have a little bit of means, not myself, but for people who have means, or even if you scrape together enough to get the mortgage sometimes, the whole process is so cumbersome. It is so unclear. You know, when you're trying to navigate, it is definitely not user-friendly. When you're trying to navigate yourself, sir, to the thing that gives you in life, apart probably from having a child, sir, or I feel like me a really nice dog. But if apart,
Holy
you know,
mackerel,
I really
yeah.
love dogs, sir. Everybody knows. But the thing that gives you the most joy, sir, is a house. And to navigate from where you are, where you're doing anything, to own the house. You know, when I moved to the Pine, I moved from my Lord, so the honorable member for St. Michael East, my good friend and mentor in many ways, sir, he knows where I come from. When I moved from St. Michael East to St. Michael Southeast, when we drove in, my mother moved about 6:30. By the time we got there, it was getting dark. I drove into the Pine, you know, and I was 5. And when I saw the block, I tell myself we got a big house because they had to soon be on the whole block. I tell myself we move up in the world. I mean, I came to realize quickly after that we only on the last one at the end there. But you know, children have a way of coming back to happiness very quickly.
Right.
So it was happy, disappointed, then back to happy because at least we were able to move out, I believe, from one circumstance to another. So the pain that in many people's point of view and perspective is a look down upon thing was a step up for me and my family. I will always defend it, Mr. Speaker, sir. I will always defend the interests of poor people everywhere, sir, because I know from whence I came.
Yes.
And Mr. Speaker, sir, the hardest thing for me to accept in a man, and I don't keep them kind of friends, is a man, sir, who forgot or forgets where he came from. And that is why when we came to office, Mr. Speaker, sir, we had a plan, sir, to make wrong things right. And so I was saying when I meet with people in my constituency on a Wednesday, housing, jobs and housing. And it's very difficult oftentimes to meet the demands, sir, of the people who want jobs or housing. But as we build forward, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I feel that we have to start thinking, and the Honourable Member for Christchurch West said it, it's West Central? Adrian? West Central. About building in an environmentally sustainable way. Changing the way that we build. Changing the thinking pattern around how we build. Sir, the houses in the Pine and Silver Hill and Gore Hill and the other areas, sir, were built to accommodate small families for a period of time. Those houses would have grandmother, mother, children, cousins. The house itself, now accommodating, the Prime Minister says it all the time, 4 and 5 generations at the same time. The houses weren't meant to do that. The infrastructure surrounding the houses, sir, never meant to accommodate so many people. So you may have one playing field that could never accommodate all the interests of all the various people who live in the community. And sir, a lot of these older communities still had assigned the sport that you must play to you. So you got a football field maybe, and maybe you got a basketball court. Man, these areas call poor people in to play squash, you see? They ain't to ever learn badminton or tennis. They ain't to learn them things. You kind of, yeah, now they start incorporating them, but those were not offered to you. So I'm saying as we build out our new housing policy, sir, I don't want us to reinforce the same existing patterns of inequality, sir, that has served to keep poor people poor. As we build out our housing policy, sir, don't let your own limitations tell you what sports poor people should play. People should have access to all kinds of things. I now have a young man, sir, in my constituency, sir, who's going to be teaching my young people how to play golf starting next week on the Bayland Pass there. Well, I ain't got no golf course. But I know if you learn to swing it there and you enjoy it, then it could easily take you somewhere else and allow you to play. I also know that growing up, a lot of the boys that I knew who were most talented, sir, at football and the same basketball, sir, after a certain while, nothing. Because the system isn't there to support them in many ways that it is to support the children of middle-class people, perhaps. Some of the fastest boys I knew at primary school, fast at primary school sports, beating people in first form, can't beat them in third form. Certainly can't beat them in fourth and fifth form. Because those other children now getting access to all kinds of special coaching. While my people now can't get that because they can't afford it, not going to the stadium on evenings under coaching. Sir, we have to be very careful as we build out so that we do not reinforce these same existing patterns of inequality, sir. And so I'm saying at the end of the day, sir, if we're not going to be able to expand, we have to think about how we're going to be able to transfer some of these people from the areas in which they live. The Pine is overcrowded, for sure. And you just have to walk through there. The one thing I like about growing up in the Pine is that you could no matter what time you leave the house, you could always find somebody outside to talk to or to play with. I also like the fact that I knew my neighbor, and my neighbor, and my neighbor, and my neighbor. And that there's some things in these communities, sir, that are naturally healthy. Much healthier than the communities in which many people now aspire to live in. You don't know your neighbors.
Yes.
Mrs. Deputy Speaker, sir, a time when I was, my mother and one of the neighbors had a quarrel. You know people just quarrel. A Sunday over burning something. The Monday morning I got up and I'm going through the back where I live to go on the road to go to school. And the lady who my mother had a quarrel with was outside cutting grass. And I said, her name was Miss Marshall. I said, good morning, Miss Marshall. And I kept walking. My mother was looking, I didn't know. My mother shouted to Miss Marshall, who she quarreled with yesterday, you know. Did he speak to you? And she said, yes, Miss Humphrey, he spoke to me. I knew that if I didn't speak to that lady that morning, notwithstanding that my mother had just had a quarrel, bare legs. Because there is a kind of social capital, sir, that is inherent in these communities. I'm making the point. Because I feel I have to make the point. Because people believe that there's nothing good that can come out of Nazareth. I even damn the idea, sir. I can't say damn. I reject the idea, sir, that it is Nazareth.
Good
in
language.
many ways. My apologies, sir. But people feel that nothing good. So I'm saying just the natural social capital that is alive in these areas, sir, you can't reproduce it. It is an organic thing. And I'm just saying, sir, as we build out, sir, let us not be so hasty, sir, as to have these shiny new white things, sir, that we forget that there is some value in some of these old things and in some of these areas, sir. And the people that live in them. One time a lady told me if she had her way, she would bulldoze from Polytechnic to Wilkie Cumberbatch. Everybody in between. It's a fact. But she didn't know it was from the Pine at the time. I just said you're an idiot. I wouldn't say that in here. I said it there. Mr. Speaker, sir, because I feel like we just have these, our own insecurities that we try, sir, to put on and project onto other people and onto other communities, sir. So I'm just saying at the end there we need to have a clear, long-standing goal. I haven't touched any of my notes. So I would wrap up, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, but I want to say as we build out, and certainly along the Bayland, because you know, sir, there's going to be a lot of development coming in that general area, sir. In our revitalization of Bridgetown project, sir. We in coastal development, we did what is called the National Coastal Risk Information Planning Platform. As a matter of fact, I just saw a request on my desk to come and speak about this planning platform in China. So forward thinking is this thing, but it tells you, sir, in the event of a disaster, which houses are likely to be impacted. If the sea, for example, were to rise by a meter, who would be impacted along the coastal areas, and you'll be surprised to see how many people would be impacted. But it also informs how we must now build, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. So that if you're going to build along the coast, you cannot build the same way you built so many years ago. Climate change is real. And I trump anybody who say otherwise. It is real. If you build out now, sir, along the coast, and you're building housing along the coast, you have to build to accommodate the rise and fall of the water.
You use the word Trump?
Huh?
You use the word
I
Trump?
would trump anybody. I wasn't referring to any one person, sir.
You use it as a verb or no?
Verb. It's a doing word.
Okay.
So I would never cast aspersions on any other person in this place, Mr.
Once you use it as a verb, it's correct.
It's a verb. To trump. Meaning to, I suppose, to overshadow, or... So, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, I'm just saying, as we build out along the coast, sorry, sir, as we build out along the coast, we can't build the same way that we used to build. I recall when I did the tour of the city with the honorable member for the city, we saw what a little bit of a rise in water did to that. What area that was when, right there in the back of the city, when the waters came down, flooded into people's houses. Sir, because the houses are so within that belt, but none of them built to accommodate excess water. And this happens several places. Houses within the belt where it is likely to be impacted by rising water none built to accommodate the rise in water. And this is not a case where we have to react to what we can't foresee. So we know it is coming. We know that the waters will rise. We know, all the science tells us that the waters will rise, are rising. And that therefore we now have to build differently. When we build, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, our new housing policy, it must include the information that the National Coastal Risk Information Planning Platform is telling us that we are at risk, sir, if we do not change the way that we build. And then lastly, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, when we build these communities, or wherever we live, we have to own them. Years ago, when they threw garbage through my window, the guy that I was driving with said to me, "Well, you don't pick that up." These years, I was a child, huh? I said, "But I'm going to pick it up. I live out here." And he told me, "That is why you have to pick it up. Because you live out here." He said, "I don't live out here." I repeated that to a young man, sir, in Paddock when he threw down a bottle. I said, "You need to pick it up because you live out here." Sir, we have areas now that all of us doing debushing. I see them on Instagram from time to time, all of us cleaning. I clean an area today. I'm sure the honorable member for the city sees it too, because in the city, sir, we have the same problem. Up by you probably too, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, everywhere. I'm sure the honorable leader of the opposition has it too. When you go through these communities, sir, you see plastic bottles, plastic bags, people just throwing away things. I clear an area, and within weeks, fridges, stoves, beds, people just dumping them. I asked the question when I went back to clear the second, but we're all doing it. You know what they told me? You did not put up a no dumping sign. But they're complaining because people are dumping. Sir, I love my people. I do. But sometimes they gotta talk tough to them. And our society in many ways is completely out of order. And that we have to be a disciplined people.
Very much so.
And I said to them, "But if you all think that I can clean it up again, no, you got another thing coming. Because this is your community." And that is why I was so happy in Jessamine Avenue over the weekend to see the boys come out, sir, and clean the very community, sir.
Very good.
Their community.
Right.
If you live in an area, sir, you have to take responsibility for it. You do.
Yes.
Because a government can't keep coming back to every gap and every street. But if you live there, and if you see somebody dumping, because what happens to is that people come from outside, ease through in the dead of night, and dump in your community. And oftentimes it's not you, but that person comes from somewhere else too.
Right.
Still Barbadian. It's still a Barbadian problem, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. So as we do all of these things, sir, in housing, I feel like we have to think holistically about what it is that we are doing. I am pleased, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, to see that there is some truth being brought to the Ministry of Housing, because for the last 10 years under the former government, we got a lot of untruths. I am pleased to see that there is some thinking going into how we would approach our housing solutions, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I know the Honourable Member for St. James South is pleased to hear about the electrical upgrade that the Honourable Member for St. Andrew announced, sir, to make sure that we take care of the electrical situation in a lot of these, because these houses, a lot of them are a second away from burning. Real leadership and real conversation in real time, not trying to mama guide people, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir. I am pleased, as I close, sir, to support this resolution. I am pleased to be a member of this team, sir, that is bringing a seriousness and a freshness to our housing situation, sir. And I trust that by the time we return to the people this time or the next, sir, they will see a real and meaningful change to the way we address housing in this country. Thank you, sir.
Member Blaise. Member for St. Michael South East.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. I rise to lend my voice to this resolution, a resolution to approve the vesting of land by the NHC at Colleton Plantation in the parish of St. Lucie. I support the Honourable Member for St. John, who would have introduced this resolution and drawn to the attention of the country, certainly, a number of the concerns, long-standing concerns in the National Housing Corporation that have plagued this country for decades. I listened attentively, Mr. Deputy Speaker, to the assurances given that work has not only started, but that work is ongoing in relation to addressing a number of the issues of maintenance, in terms of the state of the plant that is vested under the National Housing Corporation, that things are being done within the National Housing Corporation to be able to address a number of these problems. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I stand here this morning to speak on this resolution, happy that we are yet again at a state where we can speak to the serious level of what I believe is one of the most important acquisitions that any Barbadian can have in relation to land and the ability to have housing in this country. But I also stand here this morning as a representative of the largest housing estate in this country, one which has been neglected, has been bastardized over the course of several years, and in particular in the last decade, by an administration that understood and saw what the problems were, that came to this chamber and spoke about issues of maintenance and gave assurances to this country and the people of my constituency that better would be done. And I have had to come within the last couple of days back home to a family that lost a 17-year-old son through a tragedy of falling into a well that it is clear on the face of it had not been properly maintained. Mr. Deputy Speaker, as we speak about housing this morning, I am deeply hurt by what I have for the last couple of years considered in every housing resolution, and I have spoken to in the other place, to be a matter that I consider to be of urgent importance to this country, and that has been the maintenance of the housing estates, not just in the Pinelands community, but across all of the estates under which the National Housing Corporation has control and management, and also that the government of Barbados has responsibility for allocating resources. I am deeply pained to know that there are persons who, I don't know how they can sleep at night in good conscience, knowing that there are persons who are in deep mourning, knowing that there are things that could have been done in terms of a systematic maintenance program being put in place across our communities to ensure that better could be done for the poorest and the most vulnerable in this country. A message may have been sent to those who had the ability to allocate resources in this country in the last election, that people were tired of the promises and the broken promises that people have had to endure, where they could not see better conditions coming in the standard of living that they had in the units in which they had been placed and that had been vested to them. But you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, those persons who had the responsibility to supervise these estates, those persons who were vested with the contractual work to be able to go out and maintain, also today, Mr. Deputy Speaker, must also bear on their conscience as well the fact that better could have been done and better has not been done. And I'm not here today to speak on this resolution to cast blame, but I feel that I have a responsibility to those that I represent to speak to a situation that must never be allowed to happen in this country ever again in relation to housing and the management of estates under the control of the government of Barbados. This is not a private contractor to whom you can turn to pursue a matter against someone. This is a matter that cuts to the heart and the core of what we must stand for as a government and certainly as a National Housing Corporation. This speaks to standards that must exist at the level of an administration and a statutory corporation, that people must be held accountable for poor workmanship, they must be held accountable for inspection, they must be held accountable for supervision of the things under which they have under their control. And I speak with a certain passion today because, as I said, I am hurting deeply to know that we have come to office as an administration with knowledge of the problems that have existed. And we came and we found resources that were applied to things that should never have been a priority. I am at pain because I've read special audit reports on the National Housing Corporation. And I've seen money squandered in a way that even $1 million or a couple million could have repaired the wells in St. Michael's Southeast and across this country. I'm at pain that nobody has been held accountable in this country, apart from the black and white in a document to say that somebody did something wrong, but nobody has been held accountable. And when I have to listen to a mother and a father and a family ask me, should this have happened? Could this have been avoided? Could people have done something about it? How they get material now, but they can't get material before? How could they come out and inspect now, but they couldn't come and not only inspect, but act? What do I say to a family and a community where little children, as you know, I love the children of this country and in particular St. Michael's Southeast, but I have a set of residents who, because of densely populated conditions in the community, houses are cramped and they must go sometimes outside and run on top the wells in a community, innocently playing, and be placed at risk in a country that we say we want to put our people first. Mr. Deputy Speaker, I don't know what to tell these families because a young man's life has been lost. And while I know that this administration and the minister responsible for housing has been dealt a bad hand, and I know that this government has been dealt a hard blow in relation to resources, and that I know that we're going to do all within our power, whether through government or through the private sector assurances that I have been given to help to deal with the most urgent issues within the St. Michael's Southeast community, to cover the wells that, again, are exposed that other young people and other adults in the community could very well fall victim to. I am deeply concerned, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that a sense of urgency must now take place within the National Housing Corporation that has never been seen before. Because it is not just about wells. You can take a drive through these housing estates and you will find it is issues of the electrical upgrades, which we have had to obviously address in recent months in relation to putting a program in place to deal with the issue of electrical upgrades. We have had some lazy people before us who have not made this a priority. That because in some cases we have not addressed the issues of social welfare for households, that we've found ourselves in a situation where people are living in conditions where for several months they can't afford to pay for electricity. The electricity gets cut off. And because of, as you know, after a certain period of time and it's cut off, it has to be rewired. That an entire block will in some cases have to be rewired at the expense of the National Housing Corporation in order to correct the problem. And what does it say to us, Mr. Deputy Speaker? I know what it says to me. That we have to not just only say we are going to take action now, but we have to hold people to account to make sure that this type of matters never, ever present themselves in the history of this country again. I have seen in my constituency breakers without covers in houses. I have seen breakers exposed that look like they've been there since the 1960s, but really look like they were really there for the 1800s. Officers were deployed under the National Housing Corporation to go and to visit these premises and to make reports. I want the Honorable Minister, member for St. Andrew, who is responsible for this ministry, to call for the files, which, if he has not already done so, because the people who, I hope the same people are not advising now that would have had to advise the last administration.
Same people.
I hope the same people that are supervising now were not the same people who were supposed to be supervising before. Because those files must have to reflect that reports were coming from the bottom going up to the top, and they were being ignored. And I want the Honorable Minister to tell this country what really transpired in relation to these matters and the lack of maintenance. Because I must have answers for my constituency and for these families to be able to tell them whose responsibility it was, where was the error made in terms of the reporting and the action that was necessary. They must not point a finger at the Barbados Labour Party. They must not point a finger at the minister. He has come and found this situation. You know, when I hear the reports are coming in right now, I ask myself, where were the reports all along? The last administration passed legislation in relation to handing over the national housing units to persons who were in their homes for 20 years. We were told in this chamber engineers were being paid for to be able to evaluate the situation and to advise the last administration. The houses didn't now get old. The houses have been old for a while. The problems have been there for a while. What have the reports said now that the reports didn't say before that they were not acted on? I have said on the other side, and I called on the last administration to come in the estimates and say to the country, if you need more money in order to pay the legal advisors and the engineers and the valuers to be able to ensure that the process was sped up, that we then, as the opposition, would never not support that type of proposal to accelerate the handover of these units to persons living in the housing estates. We said, Mr. Deputy Speaker, we would support the fact that having placed these units in a position where they could be conveyed, that we also understood that you had to bring them to a condition that you could transfer them. And you know what is hurtful? Is to know that the last administration also allowed monies that were allocated to be able to do a lot of these repairs to these units, to go back to the overseas financiers. We find ourselves in a position now, Mr. Deputy Speaker, where we got to start all over again to be able to get financing, to be able to do these things. We got to be begging people to do things that an administration failed to do to address the problem. Sir, while I speak in such a way because I want this country and the people to understand that it is hurting me to know that we have got to make no wrong things right. But we are doing it against a background where, for me, everything in my constituency is now urgent. Yesterday, when I went through the constituency, I must have called almost every minister asking for things to be done. If it wasn't garbage to be picked up, it was, here's pictures. I was tired sending pictures to the Minister of Housing to tell him of Spalding that is ready to, the concrete is bursting. Some houses, it is a danger to some of the people. Old people can't even go in the yard because they are in danger of this concrete dropping on them from concrete roofs in Princess Royal. You understand what people are having to live with? That you have a roof over your head, but when you go outside to hang up your clothes, you don't know if you can get a piece of concrete hitting you on your head and killing you. I saw walls, Mr. Deputy Speaker, that the conditions have now so deteriorated to the point that where the walls are now leaning and they don't even have any cement or steel in them to be able to hold them up. A little child can walk past, Mr. Deputy Speaker, and just like this young man lost his life innocently, a little child or an adult can be walking and the wall can just lean over and collapse on them. If we get certain high wind, What am I supposed to say to the families, Mr. Deputy Speaker? We have to do better. We've come to office with a mandate to do better. And I don't mind if I have to pull back something in education to make sure that this becomes a priority. Because a couple of months ago, when I came back recently, I came with a plea to the Prime Minister about the state in which I found the school plants. Because I feel very passionately that my constituents in particular should not live in the type of conditions they live in. And then their children must go to schools in conditions where every minute I was being asked to close the school because of rodents and rat infestation and termite infestation, which had been neglected for a decade by the previous administration. I didn't think it was right. And I said to the Prime Minister, I cannot work with what you have given me because I will be patching holes. And I made a plea for more financial assistance to be able to help us to carry out a maintenance program on the schools to allow our students to not have leaks in the house and then come to school and have leaks in the roofs in the place where they're supposed to learn. School's supposed to be a place you're supposed to want to get up on a morning if everything else around you is falling apart and want to go. And in the same way that I have had to prioritize and get the information, I sent in officers to make sure that they went to every single school to prioritize things that have been left on the back burner. Again, in my ministry as well, I came and I found proposals that had been made in lending institutions that the last administration left it to die in abeyance because they were too lazy to ensure that these things were made a priority, that schools should have been rebuilt, that unions would not be on my case every single minute and teachers are operating in an environment where they can barely function and students having to go to school in these types of conditions. I wasn't satisfied with what I came and saw. And similarly in housing, I know the minister feels the pain. But we have to do better. And we're going to have to hold the people who we send out to do the work to account. Because in the same way I've seen the shoddy work done and the poor workmanship and people trying to give work to the friends that could barely tap a nail together, I don't know what they're supposed to be doing. We have to bring an end to that as well, Honourable Minister of Housing. That lack of accountability and the poor workmanship that has been displayed over the last couple of years, we need to bring it to an end. If we're going to get work done, we must have the highest quality and the standard of work to be done. And we have to make sure that the contractual documentation is put in place to hold people to account. So it doesn't start in the Ministry of Education or in the Ministry of Housing, but we've got to get it right even in relation to the Solicitor General's office. And to make sure that a lot of these contracts that we've seen, these little put together things on some occasions, that we bring an end to it where nobody, when the work is done badly, nobody can find the file to figure out what the contractor signed because it was just a standard precedent agreement that was signed. You think that is right? That nobody's being held to account when somebody dies in the most negligent way, and that nobody can point a finger and say that something has gone wrong and somebody should be held to account? A whole corporation must now be put under scrutiny, but the persons who are responsible for that. And I'm asking the minister to call names, but I want it put out there that it is not good enough. And if I have to come down to NHC, I ask the minister to bring the files and show me who are the people who worked on this. I want to put a name to the faces, because I cannot explain to a family how one child has been taken from them in this way when something better could have been done. And my fear is that there are others across this country whose fate we do not know. We can't sit here and say we got the benefit of time. We don't have no time. We can't say it ain't gonna happen. Why are we trying to round up the funds to be able to do it? Parents in my community are in fear every time their child leaves the house. They're in fear even in the house because of the situation with the electrical. They're in fear every time a child goes out there. I heard one parent yesterday say they were holding their belly because when they heard another youngster say, Well, mommy, I would have do the same thing. I would have gone through the track. I would have passed by the block. I would have head to the shop. I would have skip up on top of the well, and I would have come back down and go across the curb. There's par for the course in my community. Wells are everywhere. But you know what hurts me when I see a jealousy window as the covering of a well that somebody has put there because either NHC didn't come back to finish off the job in time, and parents who were concerned decided, you know what, we gotta do something. Or where I see a piece of galvanized covering a well, stuck on with a big boulder on top, that somebody in the wisdom field, that children in their playfulness and their innocence will not remove and go investigating. So my appeal, Mr. Deputy Speaker, today, as I said, I'm happy we are acquiring lands, and I'm happy that the opportunity is there from this administration to be able to allow people to become homeowners, to allow people to be able to get on with their lives and to be able to acquire a piece of this rock. But I know that while we have to rather enter into private-public sector partnerships to be able to build out these estates and these properties, that there's another burning issue on the agenda that has to be addressed and that must be addressed. And it has to be given a level of urgency. You know, I listen to the Prime Minister often say to me, Minister, I have issues of water almost every day across this country. You know, I have had burst pipes in St. Michael's Southeast. You know, you drive from Haggett Hall, you come across to Map Hill, you go into the Pine, and I remember just taking pictures of burst pipes all over the community, sending it to Water Authority to ask for the assistance for intervention. It is that makes me very concerned, Mr. Deputy Speaker, because in the same way that I'm aware that there was an improper maintenance program in place at the Barbados Water Authority and that their priorities were misplaced in relation to whether it was cleaning up the South Coast Sewage Project and the conditions that we had on the South Coast, or whether it was putting a proper maintenance plan in place to deal with the issues of pipes on the ground that were broken and old and corroding, is the same way I feel about the housing estates, that the proper maintenance program did not exist and does not exist in relation to dealing with these issues. It is why I feel the sense of urgency, because I tell myself the same workman who built the one and who I was responsible for the one in the Pine may have built another one up the street and in another community. In the same community, the member for St. Michael's South Central has come from, the Bottom Close area. These issues are real, Mr. Deputy Speaker. That in other areas of the community, those persons may have not done what they were supposed to or not inspected in the way they were supposed to inspect. And that an innocent child or an innocent adult walking by could also fall victim in a similar way to what has transpired over the course of the past few days. And so my appeal today...
I remember you have 5 minutes more.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Speaker. My appeal to the Ministry of Housing, National Housing Corporation, you know, Mr. Deputy Speaker, my appeal is that we get it right. If we have to work with who is there and those on whose shoulders the blood of this young man must now be permanently stained, I expect that you're going to make wrong things right. I expect that when I speak to the mother of the deceased, that I'm in a position to say that this life was not lost and that others will not be saved equally, because we have had a wake-up call that was perhaps long in coming, but that this young man will not die in vain. I ask that if National Housing has to now focus and to put in place the paper to come to Cabinet for the appeal, for the additional funding, that my colleagues will support it. Because it could happen to any of us. And we have seen over the course of the last couple of days that this is not a problem that is unique to St. Michael's Southeast. But that just as government has control over certain areas and certain aspects of countries' finances, and just as we have said that we have to prioritize resources, that we have to talk the country through the priority in relation to the National Housing Corporation. It is a real problem. I shared these photos with the minister from the city, who, like me, has similar issues in terms of a densely populated community, issues of poverty that he faces in his area. And you know, he said to me earlier this morning, we got it bad, but I don't think we got it as bad as you. So my plea is that we get it right this time, and that we do all within our power to ensure that what we must do now is to put wrong things right. I am grateful to those who have reached out to me in the business community to be able to help to accelerate the process of getting the remaining wells in the community that are most urgent fixed. I'm grateful for the materials that they have offered. And I just want to say that my heart goes out again to my constituents and to the residents in the community who continue to be in mourning over the loss of this young man. I thank the minister for his attendance to this matter. I know it has not been an easy thing to have to deal with, but I do appreciate it, and I have all trust and confidence that we can work together to ensure that we identify some of the major issues and challenges, and we talk through together with the people of the community who are not unreasonable. People just want to know how you're going to get where you're going to get. The Pine is not an easy place to come into. And I know that with the best intentions in the world, the issue now for NHC is to be able to prioritize. It can be a headache when you come into the Pine and you see the state of the encroachments and the things that people have been allowed to get away with. But I ask that you understand why people have done the types and the levels of construction that they've had to do. Because if we don't move at the pace that the people are moving in terms of having increasing number of children in a community, then this is what happens. And if we don't have a caring government to understand the social implications of these changes and to be able to respond in a timely manner, then we too will be called to account at the appropriate time. So I urge the NHC to get this right on this occasion, to make sure that this never happens again. And I support this resolution wholeheartedly to be able to bring to another community, certainly. And I hope that even though it is far in St. Lucie, that the residents of St. Michael's Southeast will have an opportunity to, when the appropriate time comes, to have an equal opportunity to be considered. I know that the Prime Minister, and in speaking to the Minister, has assured me that the identification of lands is a priority because they have recognized, particularly through the campaign, what we were facing in terms of densely populated areas in the housing estate. And I'm anxiously awaiting the opportunity to be able to announce to my constituents that we have the land secured and that those who want to be able to acquire a spot to be able to start the process of building. I hope that the financial institutions will be able to come on board to hold the hands of those residents in the community to help them to be able to move and to progress, to be able to own their own home. On this occasion, I believe we will get it right in terms of the roads, and we will get it right in terms of the wells, and hopefully by then we will have a proper maintenance system in place in whichever community my people have been given the opportunity to go to. I thank you, Mr. Deputy.
I'm obliged.
Mr. Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this sitting be suspended until 2:30 p.m.
Secondly. The question is that this House be suspended until 2:30 p.m. this afternoon. All members in favour say aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This House is accordingly suspended until 2:30 today.